John the Baptist. Now, there was a preacher. John the Baptist's preaching was so blistering, it could peel paint off the walls. John the Baptist's preaching would get into your gut and make your stomach turn over. John the Baptist's preaching would make a strong man squirm and a young man wince. People came out to the wilderness to hear him preach. And he said, "You brood of vipers, you snakes, you worms, who told you to flee from the wrath to come? I know what you're like. I know what you do. You can't hide from God. Where do you think you're going to run to? You're no better than the stones you've been walking on. You think you're a big fir tree that will stand forever? Well, God's going to cut down that tree and make it into firewood. So turn your life around right now." John knew these people who were coming to him. He knew about the corruption in the city, the little lies, the hidden secrets, the scandal, the bribes, the hypocrisy in the temple, right up to the chief priests and the scribes. So he put it right to them. Change your life right now, he said. Well, people listened to John, and they confessed their sins, and they were baptized by him right then and there. And when they got out of the water, they felt like new people, like they had a new start in life, forgiven. And then they started thinking, well, what now? What do we do now? What's my new life going to be like? So they asked John the Baptist, what should we do now that we've been baptized? Well, it's a pretty good question. It's one thing to have a powerful experience like John's baptism, but it's another thing to actually live it out. It's not just about how you feel inside, but it's about what you do. So they asked John the Baptist, what should we do? Now you might think that John the Baptist would be a revolutionary. You might think that he would say, just burn it all down. The Roman Empire, the temple, the priesthood, just get rid of it all. Burn it down. But he didn't do that. His instructions were very bland. If anyone has 2 coats, give one away to someone who doesn't have one. If you have some food, share it with someone who doesn't. In a way, it's revolutionary, but not in a political sense. Tax collectors came to him. Tax collectors, of all people. You know, a tax collector could grab you by the throat and force you to pay 2 or 3 times the tax that was due, and then keep all the extra that was above the due amount. And who was going to stop the tax collector? So the tax collectors asked him, what should we do? And all John the Baptist said to them was, collect no more than is due. Sounds bland, but it's revolutionary in a way. Soldiers came to him. Roman soldiers with the spears, the helmets, and the hard fists. They could demand anything from anyone at any time. And who was going to stop them? And after they were baptized, they said, and we, what should we do? He says, be satisfied with your wages. Use your power with restraint. In other words, just be the kind of person your mother raised you to be. Be honorable. John knew that society needed to be reformed, but the way he was trying to reform it was one person at a time, by talking about people's character. You know, we've all heard on the news about the young man who assassinated the healthcare executive. That young man was raging against a system that is unfair and maddening and capricious, and he figured, go for the top and cut the head of the snake off, and the snake will die. Because that's never going to work. The system will go on like it always has. And revolutions rarely produce the effect that they want to. So John the Baptist was revolutionary in his message, but very conventional in its application. He said, live a moral life. Be a good person. He says your life is like an apple tree. So look at your life. Is it bearing good apples or rotten apples? What really matters is not what the tree looks like, but what the fruit is like. Well, what should we do? How should we live? Faith has moral implications. And once we've accepted Jesus Christ as our Savior, then there's some implications for living. Robert Fulton wrote a book years ago called Everything I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. So here's the top 10 things on his list that he learned in kindergarten. 1, share everything. 2, play fair. 3, don't hit people. 4, put things back where you found them. 5, clean up your own mess. 6, don't take things that aren't yours. 7, say you're sorry when you hurt somebody. 8, wash your hands before you eat. 9, flush. 10, warm cookies and cold milk are good for you. I think that's a pretty good synopsis of Christian morality. What should we do? Live a moral life. Sometimes I think we've forgotten how important morality is. Even public figures nowadays seem to flaunt their immorality, and nobody says anything about it. Being a Christian means to have morals. This ought to be common knowledge, Christianity 101, just the basics. But maybe people need to be reminded about the basics these days. Once there was a 15-year-old girl who was going to get baptized, and her parents told her, this is a very important day in your life. So when they went to church on Sunday morning, she wore her prettiest dress, and when it came time for the baptism, she got up in front of the church with all the other young people and answered the questions in the baptismal covenant. The priest said, will you seek and serve Christ in all persons and loving your neighbor as yourself? She said, I will, with God's help. The priest said, will you strive for justice and peace and respect the dignity of every human being? She said, I will, with God's help. So on the way home from church, she asked her parents, what do I do now? And her mom said, well, what do you mean, honey? She said, well, now that I'm baptized and I belong to God, aren't I supposed to do something different? Isn't there something I'm supposed to be now? And her mom said, well, honey, just be a good person, that's all. And of course, that's the right answer. But I wonder, if John the Baptist was riding in the back seat of the car, what would he say? Stop the car right now and go into the store and buy some groceries for the food bank? Or go home and get the extra coats out of the closet and give them away to somebody? Probably, yes. Also, seek and serve Christ. In all persons, loving your neighbor as yourself, and respect the dignity of every human being. Or maybe he would say a lot more than that, I'm not sure. But I don't think I would want to have John the Baptist riding in the back seat of my car.